It is a sound unlike any other. It is not a word, not a cry, but a silence that should not be. It is the silence of a phone that never rings, of a bed that remains empty, of a question hanging in the air, forever unanswered. In the United States, hundreds of thousands of people vanish every year. Most are found quickly, but some slip through the cracks of our world, leaving behind only a void, a photograph, and a story fractured in time. This is not one story, but many. It is the story of the land, from the bustling, neon-lit streets of our greatest cities to the vast, untamed wilderness that whispers of ancient secrets. It is the story of those who were there one moment and gone the next. And it is the story of those left in the wake of that disappearance, who dedicate their lives to turning that agonizing silence back into a voice, back into a name. Our journey begins not in the deep woods, but in the heart of a modern American city, where light and crowd are supposed to be a shield. It begins with a young man full of life, on a street famous for its music. Part 1. The Digital Ghost of Broadway. The Disappearance of Riley Strain. Nashville, Tennessee, a Friday night in March. On Broadway, the heart of the city's entertainment district, the energy is a palpable force. The neon signs of honky-tonks bleed into the street, each one a siren's call of country music, cold beer, and fleeting camaraderie. Laughter mixes with the twang of guitars from open windows. It is a place designed for memory-making, for letting go. Among the crowd on March 8, 2024, was Riley Strain, 22 years old, a University of Missouri student, bright, with a wide smile and a future mapped out in business and friendship. He was here on a spring break trip with his fraternity brothers, a rite of passage. The night was a collection of moments, jokes shared over drinks, the easy comfort of friendship, the simple, unthinking joy of being young and free in a city that never sleeps. The group settled into Luke Bryan's Luke's 32 Bridge, a multi-story bar pulsating with music and energy. But the script of the perfect night was about to be torn up. According to the establishment, Riley had too much to drink. The policy was clear. He was cut off and asked to leave. His friends, concerned, tried to intervene. They attempted to stay with him, to guide him back to the safety of the group. But in the confusion, the stubbornness that often accompanies intoxication, and the overwhelming sensory overload of Broadway, he insisted he was fine. He walked away, a decision made in a split second, a solitary figure swallowed by the crowd. The time was approximately 9:35 p.m. This is the moment where the world splits in two. In one reality, his friends likely assumed he was heading back to the hotel, that they would see him soon, maybe even share a laugh about it later. In the other reality, Riley's journey was taking a different, darker path. What followed was a haunting digital autopsy, a trail of breadcrumbs captured by the unblinking eyes of city surveillance cameras. He became a ghost in the machine, his final movements pieced together frame by frame. We see him walking, a tall, lanky figure in a distinctive shirt. He crosses streets, sometimes with purpose, sometimes with a disoriented gait. He is seen interacting with a police officer, a brief, non-confrontational exchange that was later confirmed by authorities. He was, in that moment, alive and coherent enough to pass a casual check. This footage would later become a point of both relief and profound frustration for his family. He was so close to help, yet entirely alone. His phone, a modern-day tether to the world, provided its own clues. Its last ping to a cell tower placed him near the Cumberland River, the dark, powerful waterway that snakes behind the glittering facade of Broadway. The time was 9:47 p.m., just 12 minutes after he left the bar. The river, which moments before had been a scenic backdrop, was now the central character in a terrifying mystery. As dawn broke on Saturday, the mystery solidified into panic. Riley was not in his hotel room. His phone went straight to voicemail. His friends' texts remained undelivered. The fraternity brothers, now sober and terrified, reported him missing. The machinery of a modern search began to whir into motion. The Nashville Metro Police launched an investigation. The family, living every parent's worst nightmare, descended upon the city. His mother, father, and stepfather, their faces etched with a fear that is every family's secret dread, stood before cameras and made their pleas. Their words were simple, direct, and utterly heartbreaking. "Please help us find our boy." They handed out flyers with his smiling face, a face that belonged in a college yearbook, not on a missing person poster. The community responded. Volunteers walked the riverbanks, their eyes scanning the muddy shores for any clue, a shoe, a piece of fabric, anything. The police and fire departments deployed sonar boats, their technology probing the murky depths of the Cumberland. The U.S. Coast Guard joined the search. Social media amplified the family's plea, and the Find Riley strain began to trend, a digital torch held high in the hope of piercing the darkness. For 2 weeks, the search was a national story. Every lead was chased, every piece of footage analyzed. The family held on to hope, citing his strong will and the lack of any evidence of foul play. They clung to the possibility that he was disoriented, maybe injured, but alive. But the river, as it often does, kept its secrets until it was ready to reveal them. On March 22nd, 2 weeks after he vanished, a worker on the river spotted something. The recovery operation was swift and somber. A body was pulled from the water, miles downstream from where he was last seen. The official confirmation came days later. It was Riley. The young man who had come to Nashville full of life was gone. The medical examiner's report provided the clinical, devastating facts. Cause of death, drowning. Manner of death, accident. The toxicology report showed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.228, nearly 3 times the legal limit for driving. There were no signs of traumatic injury indicative of an attack. For the family, the closure was a hollow victory. The question of where was answered, but the how and why remained and always will. How did he end up in the water? Was it a misstep on a slippery bank? A moment of confusion? The case was closed by the authorities, but for those who loved Riley, it remains an open wound. Riley Strain's story is a modern American tragedy. It highlights the hidden dangers that exist just steps from our brightest lights. It forces a conversation about personal responsibility, the duty of care owed by entertainment establishments, and the critical, non-negotiable importance of the buddy system. It is a story that echoes in every college town, in every family sending a child out into the world. A reminder that safety is a fragile thing, and that sometimes the most vibrant places can cast the darkest shadows. Part 2. The Vanishing Point, the enduring mystery of the Springfield. 3. Now let us travel back in time and west to a different kind of American landscape. The American suburb, Springfield, Missouri, June 1992. It is a place of manicured lawns, quiet streets, and a pervasive sense of normalcy. It is the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked, where everyone knows their neighbors, and where terrible things are not supposed to happen. On the morning of June 7th, 1992, the tranquility of this world was shattered in a way that would forever haunt the city. It began as a day like any other, until it wasn't. A mother, Cheryl Levitt, aged 47, was not at her job. Her daughter, Suzanne Streeter, aged 19, and her daughter's friend, Stacy McCall, aged 18, had not returned home after a night of graduation celebrations. They were supposed to have driven to Branson for a water park trip that morning. They never showed up. A concerned friend went to the house on Delmar Street. What they found inside would become the stuff of national nightmares and one of the most perplexing missing persons cases in American history. The house was not ransacked. There was no sign of a violent struggle. Yet, everything was wrong. A porch light globe was shattered on the front steps, as if kicked or knocked over in a struggle. Inside, the television was left on, blaring to an empty room. The family dog, a little poodle named Cinnamon, was found, anxious and unfed, shut away in a porch room. Cheryl's cigarettes and purse were there. Suzanne and Stacy's purses were lined up neatly on the living room floor, their keys inside. Stacy had even left her contact lens case behind. It was as if the three women had been preparing for bed and then vanished into thin air. They were there, and then they were not. The scene was so peaceful, so ordinary, and yet so profoundly, chillingly wrong. It defied all logic. A single, violent home invasion would have left a mess. A voluntary departure would not have included leaving behind purses, wallets, and essential personal items. This was something else. The investigation exploded. The Springfield Police Department was faced with a puzzle with no edges. Suspects emerged, only to be dismissed. A man named Robert Craig Cox, a violent criminal who was in the area, claimed knowledge of the crime, but later recanted. Rumors swirled of a connection to organized crime, of a kidnapping gone wrong, of a targeted hit. But nothing stuck. The lack of forensic evidence was, and remains, staggering. There were no clear fingerprints that didn't belong, no blood, no DNA. One of the most bizarre leads came years later. In 1994, the parking garage of Cox Hospital, which was being demolished, became a point of interest. A caller, claiming to be a psychic, told investigators the women were buried under the garage. The police, desperate for any lead, used ground-penetrating radar and found an anomaly. They drilled core samples but found nothing. The lead evaporated, another dead end in a case defined by them. The case of the Springfield Three is a different kind of horror from Riley Strain's. It is not a story of a single misstep, but of a violation so complete it erases its own traces. It is the terror of the familiar becoming alien. The home, the ultimate sanctuary, became a black hole. The mystery gnaws at the fundamental premise of suburban safety. If three women can vanish without a trace from their own home, then where is safe? Decades have passed. Cheryl, Suzanne, and Stacy would be much older now. Their families have aged, some passing away without answers. Yet the case remains open. It is a cold case in name only, as it burns as hot as ever in the hearts of detectives who have passed the file down through generations and in the community that will never forget. Every few years, a new tip comes in, a new theory is posited online. The hope for resolution is a flickering candle that refuses to be extinguished. The Springfield Three represent the ultimate cold case, not just who, but how. How does the world simply swallow three people whole? Part 3. Into the Wild. The Unwritten Rules of the Unknown. Our final story takes us away from the man-made world entirely, into the embrace of America's last great wildernesses. Every year, thousands of people venture into the nation's vast network of national parks and forests. They go seeking beauty, solitude, and adventure. Most return with photographs and memories, but a certain number do not return at all. The phenomenon of people vanishing in national parks is so prevalent and so perplexing that it has spawned its own field of study and a set of unsettling patterns documented by authors and researchers. These are not cases with names known to every household, but a collective mystery. They are the hikers who step off a well-marked trail and are never seen again. The children who vanish in a blink of an eye in an area that has been thoroughly combed by searchers. The experienced outdoorsmen who, despite their skills, seem to evaporate. Consider the patterns that defy easy explanation, the clustering of disappearances in specific, often geologically unique areas of parks. The fact that many of the missing are found in areas that had been previously searched, sometimes repeatedly. The bizarre state in which some bodies are discovered, often naked, or with their clothing neatly folded nearby, a behavior inconsistent with hypothermia. The frequent lack of any obvious cause of death, even when the body is found. Take the case of a 2-year-old boy who vanished from a campground in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. Dennis Martin was on a family camping trip over Father's Day weekend. He was playing a simple game of hide-and-seek with his brother and cousins. He stepped behind a tree, and when the other children looked, he was gone. A massive search was launched immediately, involving thousands of personnel, tracking dogs, and even military special forces. They found nothing, not a shoe, not a shred of clothing. The rugged, dense terrain of the Smokies seemed to have simply absorbed him. Then there are the cases that challenge our understanding of human behavior in the wild. Experienced hunters, intimately familiar with their territory, who vanish without a trace. Seasoned hikers who leave their gear behind and walk off into the wilderness for no discernible reason. These stories suggest that the wilderness itself may play an active role in these disappearances, preying on the mind as much as the body. Theories abound, from the rational to the speculative. Some point to rogue waves of criminal activity, serial killers operating in the vastness of the parks. Others suggest natural hazards we don't fully understand, sudden fissures in the earth, toxic gases from geological features, or even infrasound, low-frequency sound waves generated by the wind or geological formations that can induce feelings of dread, confusion, and irrational behavior in humans. The most compelling theory, however, may be a simple acknowledgement of the sheer scale and primal power of the wild. Our modern minds are ill-equipped for the ancient rules of these places. A simple fall, a twisted ankle, a sudden change in weather can turn a pleasant hike into a life-or-death situation in minutes. Disorientation can set in with terrifying speed, leading even experienced people to walk in circles, to shed their clothes in a state of paradoxical undressing brought on by severe hypothermia, and to ultimately succumb in a location that, despite our technology, remains hidden. The National Park Service has a difficult and grim task. The searches are heroic, exhaustive, and often heartbreakingly futile. These cases rarely have the narrative closure of a Riley strain or the concentrated mystery of the Springfield Three. They are a diffuse, ongoing tragedy, a reminder that for all our mapping and satellite imagery, there are still places in America that do not belong to us. They are places that keep their secrets, demanding a humility that we, in our technologically assured world, often forget. Conclusion: the unending search. From the digital riverbanks of Nashville to the silent house on Delmar Street to the deep, silent woods of a national park, the stories are different. But the human experience is the same. It is the experience of a fracture in reality. The unthinkable becomes thinkable. The impossible becomes the daily reality for the families left behind. For them, time stops and yet rushes forward cruelly. Birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries become landmines of grief. The world moves on, but they are trapped in the moment of that silence, that unanswered question. They become amateur detectives, forensic experts, and public advocates, driven by a love that is stronger than the passage of time. These stories force us to look at our own lives, our own families, our own routines. They are a memento mori for the modern age, a reminder of fragility, but they are also a testament to resilience. The families of the missing are some of the strongest people you will never know. They lobby for changes to laws, they run foundations, they keep the flames of memory alive long after the news cameras have gone away. The search for the missing is a fundamental human impulse. It is the refusal to accept that a person can be erased. It is the belief that every story deserves an ending, no matter how painful. It is the hope, however faint, that a phone will ring, a door will open, and the silence will finally be broken. Until then, we are left with the photographs, the stories, and the questions. They are a part of the American landscape now, as permanent as the mountains and as persistent as the river's current. They remind us to hold our loved ones close, to be present in each moment, and to never ever take the sound of a returned hello for granted.